Welcome, everybody. My name is Yuvika Sharma, and I'm the managing partner at Matilda. I'm super excited to welcome you all to today's webinar, where we are going to be talking about what does the future of retail safety look like and how is agentic AI changing everything. And I am joined by three amazing experts from Axon team. And for those of you who do not know, Axon is leader in AI-powered retail technology, and they bring together loss prevention, retail security, the technology leaders for in-depth look at what autonomous AI really means for frontline operations. Before we go in, I would love to hand it over to our experts to give a brief introduction about themselves. So Arjun, we would like to go with you first.
Thanks very much. So my name is Arjun Subramanian. I'm the head of product and R&D for Axon's enterprise business. I own all of our enterprise products like the AV Mini.
Amazing. Joe?
Hi, I'm Joe DeGrassi. I'm the director of the Western Enterprise accounts, but I primarily focus on retail and Fortune 500. I've been in the physical security industry for about 15 years and spent a lot of time working with everything from the camera manufacturers to the large VMS companies to all different kinds of providers. So really looking forward to the conversation.
Okay. Keith?
Thank you very much, Keith Obley. I've spent about 30 years in a retail vertical, retired from Walmart as the director of asset protection, and then I was a senior VP at Home Depot for a number of years to help them with a tremendous amount of challenges. And today I am the CEO of Navigate Group. We work with retailers and solution providers to help protect assets, people, and customers as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So when I was reading a little bit about you, I started digging a little bit more in terms of what is happening in the retail space. I was definitely blown away. And I thought that before we dive into the conversation, just for the sake of our audience, I thought it would be helpful to just step back a little bit and just tell a little bit about what is happening in the landscape. And what I found was a little bit shocking, but you guys are the experts, and I'm sure you can validate. But from what I found out, I saw that the retail shrink reached approximately $90 billion last year, with an estimated 60 billion considered preventable. And when I started thinking more about it, I thought that, okay, the bigger challenge isn't inventory, it's really people. And then I started digging a little bit more, and I found that based on some of the surveys that were done with a number of institutes, it came to light that about 35% of retail workers say that they feel unsafe at work, and nearly half of store managers say safety concerns are making it harder to hire and retain employees. So it's no longer a loss prevention issue, it's becoming a workforce issue. And at the same time, we hear almost every security vendor says that they use AI, but it's very important for people to realize that not all AI is the same. So I'm very excited to hear from some of you to even shed some light on that and also explore what autonomous or agentic AI actually mean in retail and where it can make a meaningful difference. Where should humans stay firmly in control, and what challenges still need to be addressed? So I'm super excited to dive into the conversation. Before we get started, we would like to understand where everybody is on their AI or agentic AI journey. So with that, Jess, I would love for you to bring up a poll for our audience to answer. So if you can quickly answer this poll, it'd be great. Did everybody have a chance to answer it? Great. Jess, you want, okay. All right, so 15% are still in research mode. Not surprised. Definitely a lot of people are running pilots. Some people have deployed in production, and some people haven't even started yet. So definitely not surprised by those numbers. So thank you so much for answering that. So with that, I'd like to dive right into the section. And nowadays, everybody says that they use AI, whether it is children, and nowadays even celebrities. You open up Instagram, you see Reese with a spoon saying that, hey, she's talking about AI. So no doubt everybody's using AI. But when it comes to Axon, what does it mean when we say agentic AI? And how is that different from alerts and analytics retailers are already receiving or they already have those in place? And I'd love to start with you, Arjun, on that.
Yeah, sure. So maybe some context for the audience as how Axon sees what's happening in the industry right now. We're in a very, very exciting time, and we think the age of the camera has arrived. And so, you can think maybe just go back a couple of years. Cameras were everywhere, but they were largely used for retrospective analysis, right? Security teams had CCTV cameras. People would go to the footage when there was incidents. You'd have to find using some kind of old BMS system. You'd have to find the camera, which probably had the incident you were interested in, and then go back and figure out what actually happened in that incident. And all that is happening in a retrospective fashion. There's a couple of big trends that are now helping us really turbocharge the investments companies have made in their cameras. And I think that Axon's right at the cutting edge of this. The AI and vision models that are coming out now and that we're building into our products today are really going to turbocharge the return on investment that customers have made into their existing cameras. But also, when we start to deploy these cameras as wearable devices, like you can see the AB Mini into the field, you're going to start seeing all of these vision feeds come in and start being able to help companies do very, very, very interesting workloads that just couldn't have been done by people before or were done maybe inefficiently before. So let's think about that for a minute, right? So you have, all these CCTV camera streams flowing into a command center. Your GSOC could be recorded video that's coming in from body cameras, from drone footage, et cetera, et cetera. And first, all of our models are now getting smart enough to being able to detect a lot of interesting events that are happening in the footage. And they're able to do this in real time at the edge. So, what used to be something that's retrospective is now a real-time alert that's coming to you. Once you have those kinds of detections, you can use the data that we have in these systems to put pieces together and start to be able to respond in real time. So things that a human being used to do, like maybe watch an alert and then be able to take some kind of follow-up action based on some kind of standard operating procedure. Now you can put those two together and have agentic flows that actually drive some of these workflows with humans in the loop. And I think this is really interesting because for the first time, the technology is giving us the capacity to execute something like this. If you're in this industry, you probably know just how many false alarms there are. So every time there's a door open somewhere, yeah, where it shouldn't be open, or there's a tripwire tripped somewhere, you're going to get an alarm. And most security teams are completely overwhelmed with the noise that's hitting them. And so this is just a simple example of a situation where an agentic worker can just look at the video feed, look at the alarm and alert, and execute an SOP, right? And you can start to extrapolate where we go from here. We're going to be in a world where all of these SOPs that teams have had, maybe crusty, old documents sitting in a, drive somewhere where you train someone on for a week, maybe a few days. Now we're able to mechanize those in the product in a digital way and have agents actually execute them. So you can not only, like make sure that people are following your SOPs, you can iterate and improve on them.
Wow. That was, as you were speaking all this, I was actually visualizing, and I was also thinking that how dated things were back then. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like you're putting the agent and then of course the human in the loop and then marrying everything together. So that is great. But interestingly, you started talking a lot about, the cameras and vision. So the next follow-up question I have on that is that with Axon Vision, which you have that can detect fights, unauthorized access and medical emergencies from existing camera feeds without facial recognition. Can you walk us through a little bit more in terms of what that actually looks like in a retail environment from detection to actual response?
Yeah, sure. Joe, you want to take a stab at this one?
Yeah, I could take a stab at this. It really depends on the SOP that that retailer has. I think it and what type of retailer it would be as well. If we're looking at like, a big box retail or something like that, and they have a medical emergency, fight breakout, something like that, they might have a larger team that can respond than, let's say, like a C store or a QSR, or maybe even a luxury retailer. You might only have a few associates. So it just kind of depends. And then where we really help is making sense of the data and then helping them figure out what action to take. Partnering with companies like Aura even are really beneficial for these types of incidents as well. So you can be a little more proactive rather than just reactive, and then having their data from like a case management perspective and allowing us to share that data with them, and then having that store manager or associate have more proactive alerts. Those could also benefit. But looking from like a vision model perspective, I think the way that they respond, we allow and enable them to make the right decisions and help them with their policies and procedures. Sometimes even help audit that. But it will kind of just depend on the retail environment and how the retailer's set up, if they have an LP team, if they have just associates, and the way that they respond to those events.
Amazing. No, that's great. And then, Joe, actually, I have another question for you. So, I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Is it pronounced as fusus?
Fusus. Fusus.
Fusus. All right.
So it's
So,
the Latin word for spindle, but
okay, that's
fusus.
good to know. So, if anybody didn't know what the origin was, now you heard from Joe on that. So, with fusus, was reading that it aggregates feeds from thousands of sources into one operating picture. And how does that change what a global security and operations center team can realistically do versus what they're doing today?
So Arjun talked a lot about it at the beginning here. Looking at retailers or even just outside of retail, just kind of the overall security industry. When you start to add all these layers, so let's say you take a camera and the camera has their own AI detections at the edge and it's running whatever, either a vision model or whatever analytic. What happens is the more sensors, the more data, the more you have, the more noise that can be created. So what Fusus enables us to do is not only just normalize all of those data points into one common operating picture and one single user interface. Axon helps make sure that that user experience, and we configure it and do all these things with our partners. But agentic AI, adding that layer on top, will help us, and that's kind of our vision of where we're going to it, but help us take that noise and make sense of it. Make sure that you're taking action on the right things, and maybe saying these 10, noise elements of alerts that are coming in are not something that you need to take action on, but because of some other thing, either from like a rules engine or however we determine it, it'll tell us what we should be doing. And I think that's where agentic AI is going to help the GSOC evolve, is making sense of a lot of the data. Another thing, to consider is the traditional VMS space. You got 99% of the video that's in a VMS is never looked at ever again. And the industry, especially in retail, has been trying to figure out like, how do we make this data more usable? What do we do with it? Is it more cross-functionally beneficial if we're running different types of analytics via heat mapping, NCAP analysis, queue line detection, performance during different types of sales? And do we see an influx of people, demographic information? They've already been trying to do that for a while, but I think it's struggled because of the lack of agents. Like agentic AI is newer, and quite often that data just isn't utilized properly. And I think that's where Fusus can kind of come in, is not only just aggregating it, making sense of it, but then the next layer of adding agents will just help autonomously make them more efficient. And then eventually help us, cross-functionally show operational impact. And that's more of a later question I think we're going to talk to here. But that's kind of my thoughts to it. I'm curious, Arjun, do you agree on kind
Yeah.
of
So a few more things maybe to think about. For the first time, we have a pane of glass here that can just not just aggregate camera feeds, which is like a big part of it, but it's not the only thing. We can bring in your access controls, we can bring in your drone assets, your robotic security assets. We can wire in all of the field cameras that you have that may not even be security related, and deploy new sensors on the body to be able to collect video feeds as workers go about doing their jobs. And I think what's going to happen to this industry is this investment that companies have primarily made and thought about as a cost, right? So you have security, you want to keep people safe, and those things are really important. It's rapidly going to become a revenue driver. It's going to become measured based on return on investment, and we're going to maximize the utility of these investments by adding more and more and more capabilities, right? So when you deploy the Fusus product and the Edge appliance, it can do a lot of security related things for you. But Axon is investing enormously in being able to expand the capability set. so that we can start to do more. And those agents are not just going to be able to automate security related responses, but because we have all of these data points now in the system, and you have like one set of cameras or one set of access controls, we can now coordinate things that couldn't be coordinated before. Some of them will be security related responses, but they could be lots of other things that we could do with this system. And so I think this is where the magic really starts to come out, is that we're at an inflection point where these camera-based systems are going to become business drivers. Companies will deploy these smart systems to be able to get better at customer experience. They will get better at driving revenue and conversion. They'll look at friction points, like where is my staff trained well and where are they not trained well, and you can review the video footage to be able to do that. And the agents are going to help you review that video footage because it was just too much for humans to do, but agents can review them and queue off of interesting points where maybe the training for associates could be improved. Simple things like, look, when a customer walks in through the store, are they being greeted? Right? For the first time, that can be audited in a way that just couldn't be done before.
And to Art, just to further on one thing that Arjun touched there, you notice the cameras behind us, these body cams. These are essentially sensors, and in retail, there's all different kinds of sensors. Arjun talked very eloquently about all the variety of sensors and things that we can bring in under Fusus and aggregate that. But I think this device also, especially related to either vision models or potentially agents later, it gives you a completely different perspective. What I've seen in a lot of retailers is, especially like at the queue line, you'll deploy like a 360 fisheye camera. But the problem with that is, even when a VMS does deep warping, you really don't get a true holistic picture of what's going on in that environment. And Arjun talked about the greeter, but all the way to the person at the checkout counter, having that first person perspective gives us a lot more data that's more actionable, which again then helps us, whether we're having agents for efficiencies or whatever we're trying to analytic and things that we're trying to do, or dashboards creating and showing the impact that something that they could be doing could be making. So yeah, the type of sensor, I think you touched on that, Arjun, really eloquently, really is going to also help change the dynamic of what we can do in retail.
Wow. If you touched on so many different things, right? So one thing that I really like, Joe, that you said that people have a lot of data, right? And the best thing is that, now with the capabilities that you bring to the table, people will be able to understand like what all they can do, right? And then Arjun, you blended so many things that oftentimes when people think about these cameras or these devices, they're probably thinking that, oh, security, but you just put it in a different perspective that, hey, how can it actually improve the customer experience? So don't look at this as a way to help you drive revenue, help, improve that customer experience, and really help improve the efficiency for the staff and really make sure that as an organization, you're performing better. But when we have systems that can detect and aggregate and coordinate faster than any human operator, which is amazing, it always raises the question, which a lot of times people are asking in the industry, that if the technology can act faster, more consistently than a person, then should we let it, right? So that leads me into some additional questions that I want to talk about. And you had briefly mentioned about the human in the loop. So Axon's own design principle is alerts informed decisions, and people make. In your opinion, is that right line for the retail, or do you feel that it needs to be tweaked? And I would welcome maybe Arjun for you to dive into that first, and then of course, have other people dive in as they feel like it.
Yeah. So I think some history and context into Axon here is really helpful because it kind of like guides everything that we do. So one of the benefits of coming from where we do is that trust, transparency, and traceability are really, really important. And they're guiding principles of how we design products here at Axon. So the data belongs to the customer. They are in full control of what happens to that data. And every single aspect of this system is traceable, right? Which is a big part of accountability. And when we think about models, right, we have to think about adapting how, those things work in that world because, many things can now be done autonomously. So one principle we always have is that you should always know what happened and why. And second, you should be able to have a human in the loop for approvals, right? And only for the most, confident tasks where you feel like really, really comfortable that the consequence is really low, you can essentially, maybe put it on autopilot. So This is the general principle that we approach things with, but at all times, the customer is in control of how they want to orchestrate any of these things. And I think one thing for customers to think about as they go about deploying these systems is that you've got to be able to take the data that's coming in from these systems and compare it to how you would have responded without the computer assistance, right? So think about a world where you just had security footage and a Word documents SOP, right? And in those situations, we see customers all the time where it's just not possible to train your staff perfectly or execute perfectly on these SOPs. So the standard that's being held right now is imperfect execution, right? And so you might not always have the right communications, you might not always send out the right emergency comms, you might not have the right responses. So the right frame of comparison is the current process that's happening today. And what we think customers will realize when they put in these advanced vision systems is that these agents will be able to vastly exceed the current standard, right? And now you're going to want to have humans in the loop and the auditability and traceability and all of that. And the system is going to give you every one of those tools. And as these models get more and more sophisticated, and you personally feel comfortable about how these responses are being handled, you can delegate more and more of that to the system. So I think this will be a trajectory. It's a journey for customers to go on. It's a change for people to navigate about how they think about things. But I think that they will find that in the long run, these investments are going to pay off enormously, not just for their security teams, but for their customers.
Okay. Thank you so much, Arjun. Joe, did you want to add anything to that?
I mean, he covered a lot there. Like one thing I would say is, agents are really good at executing well-defined steps reliably, right? That we specify what they're supposed to do, and then autonomously they go out and they do these things. But where they're weaker is kind of recognizing the situation if maybe they've started to stray a little bit outside of the boundaries that they were designed for. And I think, when data is ambiguous and, policy changes, whatever happens, that's where that human oversight becomes even more important. And when Arjun's talking about like how foundationally we're built, where, you have that auditability, we have that traceability, it's built on trust, that's going to really help us with that human oversight because the agent may think it's doing something it's supposed to, but as it sways away, human oversight can help put it back in its lane and also audit whether or not it did something it shouldn't have done, or we need to reconfigure the agent to complete a task in a different manner, or whether we want to just turn it off entirely, right? That's where human intervention comes. And I think that's why, like Arjun, again, talking to the traceability and just kind of like our four core foundational elements, allowing people to see what happened, when, and why. I think that's a very, very important part of deploying agents.
Amazing. Whenever somebody says trust and human oversight with AI, I absolutely love those words because I'm like a champion. So it was all music to my ears. So having said that, Keith, I actually have a question for you, considering you are an industry expert. If an agentic system can respond faster and more consistently than a GSOC operator managing dozens of feeds, what is your take for keeping a human in the loop?
So while we approach this AI revolution, there's a couple key points from a retailer perspective as it applies to, for instance, the GSOC application. For years and years, we have been reactive, really, in the way that we've approached practically everything. And to this date, I still believe that a lot of retailers are reactive. What AI is allowing us to do, for instance, in a GSOC environment, is just not respond to the activities that are occurring today. If we're responding to the activities that are occurring today, we've already fallen behind the curve. So I apply what I call horizontal thinking and horizontal targeting, where we can utilize AI to put together predictive analysis, for instance, that can project out what are the issues we need to be addressing today that will be hitting and attacking us in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. But more importantly, I think when you talked about the $90 billion shrink impact, one thing that we don't want to overlook is that risk management costs, whether that be accident costs in the store, whether it be associates or employees or customers, is an equally damning number that impacts retailers. And where I see an incredible advent for products that Axon's developing is in this safety and life safety protection realm. And that's where everybody really needs to get excited on this call. Shrink is something we fight all the time. Sometimes we take a black eye if we're not prepared and doing the job right. But in most instances, we're making progress as much as we possibly can. Safety, there is no error, room for error. It costs lives. And if you're trying to figure or calculate an ROI on a safety platform such as AI, then you need to look at throwing the typical ROI model out the window and talking about what's the cost of a life. And just by applying some of these things, such as the Axon body-worn camera that you see there, could prevent the loss of a life.
Mhm.
And that's why retailers today need to adapt the technology that's available that's going to help us protect our associates and our customers to an incredible degree.
Mhm. Amazing. No, I really, really appreciate your point on how the investment is going to make sure that the staff is safe. Because, it's not always about the money, but yeah, like if your staff is safe, you are eventually going to get the money back. And it's more important, right? Like, and to your point, right, that there is really no cost to a life, right? So
If you
that was one.
I'm sorry, Yuvika, but if you've ever sat in a deposition, and I'm sure many people here on this call have sat on depositions where they've been challenged, whether it was an abduction, rape, murder, from an individual off of their parking lot or their store environment. It's a very, very challenging situation to try to defend a retailer who may or may not have had the proper precautions in place or who had possibly not interpreted or properly prepared. Whereas the tools that we're talking about today are the tools that are going to help us prepare to defend those types of situations from ever occurring. So it's a sobering type of point, but it's an important point that everybody should take away.
I feel it's a very important point, in my opinion. But no, thank you for that. On your insights and everybody with respect to the human in the loop aspect. And we all know that now with agents, they have the ability to act. And oftentimes, people are not asking the question enough, right? That who is accountable. So I want to talk a little bit more about governance, right? And especially when it comes to these agents. So when an autonomous system makes a wrong call in a store, hypothetically, let's say that happens, how do you reconstruct what happened? And if you have like, something that has already happened to, would love to hear that as well. But from Axon's perspective, what does the audit trail actually capture? And Joe, I would love to start with you on that one.
Yeah, I think Arjun and I touched on this just a few minutes ago as well, right? When the whole entire system is built on trust and traceability, pretty much any action or anything that happens in the system is auditable. And what we got to realize is like, oversight isn't binary when we're talking about agents. It ranges from, full human in the loop to maybe like, looking at every action to even periodic review of these types of logs and outcomes. So having a system that enables you to be able to see why and what happened, and then be able to correct and either retrain the agent, see if it swayed out of where it was supposed to be, or if it just made the wrong call. One of the nice things to, I think, like physical security and what we're dealing with, we're probably not going to be like agents in retail could be communicating with customers. I don't think we're going to have that. We're not going to be dealing with, cash transactions either and issuing money. Those are a lot harder to reverse than something like a GSOC operator not getting a data point that maybe they needed, or potentially getting a different data point that they needed, or missing something because it's determined that it's not important. That's the kind of stuff that Fusus will really, really help, and especially combining with the body cam because of just our core nature of that traceability. That's my
Okay.
thoughts to it. Arjun, I'm curious, do you have any other take on what I kind of said there?
No, that's about right. So like when you open up our product for every simple thing, like you want to watch a video, you want to redact pieces of it, you want to be able to have something sensitive that you maybe caught in a transcript, maybe using Axon Assistant and so on and so forth. Everything that you're doing is essentially being audited, digital audited. And it's part of our heritage of where we come from. We were forced to do this and design every aspect of our cloud services and our products to be able to do this. Not everybody can do that, but we can. But that's because of our criminal history background where we come from. And I think we're just going to keep that, going forward because it's actually foundational to how we think about product development.
Yeah, I believe, Mika, that in the retail industry, it's incredibly important when you partner with individuals such as an Axon that you're investigating how well they protect and design their product for fail-safe. There are companies out there that are in hot water today because they haven't processed or properly secured their data. I know for a fact that I advise my clients to weigh heavily into the Axon offerings only because they probably have one of the strongest technological backbones to make sure that that data is not only secured and protected, but is not improperly shared with anyone outside of who you wish to share it with. You do not want to invest in a solution that is going to end up costing you your opportunity to stay employed with that company. And I've seen this happen in my career where people step out on a ledge and they buy a new technology only for it to fail and fail miserably. You would be the scapegoat. And I'm saying to challenge yourself to make sure that you're hitching your wagon to a company that has the credibility of an Axon, for instance, that's not only been in the retail field for an extended period of time, but owns the military and law enforcement field like no other company in this world. So when you look at that heritage and what they've had to do to protect the product through the law enforcement and military ranks and realms, you can only imagine how safe and secure it is for the retail users.
Thank you so much, Keith. And those are great answers. And whenever I hear, data and when people are talking about traceability and logs, just out of curiosity, do you mind sharing, like, what kind of data is logged? Like, and if somebody had to ask you that, okay, show me this, and who has access to reconstruction? Can you just maybe touch a little bit on that, if possible?
Arjun, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, look, every single action, right? You log in, that's, you're authenticated. You watch a video, you're authenticated. So every single thing, there's actually a long list of those actions that a user takes in order to be able to reconstruct exactly what happened. If you can't really like delete something without that audit trail showing what was deleted. If you viewed something, it will show that. If you listen to a transcript, it's going to show that. And every aspect of this, now this might seem kind of simple, but like we have to reconstruct all of this from like different parts of the cloud software and what's happening on the hardware. If somebody pressed a panic button, if somebody wanted to record a video, all of this stuff, every single user action where it leaves behind a digital trail, right? And that digital trail is what we call a audit trail. The button presses, what you saw, when you saw it, and so on. Now, we do all of that in the system for the operators so that you can reconstruct what the operators are doing. But also, we're investing a lot in being able to bring some of those tools to reconstructing scenes and events. So you can also think about this as like, look, we had to respond to an incident, and now there's a car and there's a person, and they're moving across multiple camera feeds, and so we have to be able to reconstruct what happened there. And so that's incident reconstruction from like a suspect's point of view, right? Like so you're trying to go investigate an event, and you're going to get the benefit of our system in that situation as well. So I think it's really important to think about this as like, it may feel boring, but it's sort of a click for click, digital breadcrumb, if you will.
By the way, it did not sound boring to me. I really loved everything that you said.
I
So
think
with that,
another important
go
part,
ahead.
Arjun, is that you are in control of the data, correct? That you have as to who
Yeah,
you share it with, especially with a Fuchsia's type platform.
100%. So this is foundational to how we operate. The customer owns the data. It's that simple. Like no ifs, no buts. Customer owns the data. You're in control.
Amazing. That's
And
good.
remember, auditability can be, especially in retail or really any environment where you're looking at video validation. Arjun just touched on all these great things for agents, but just like even in the simplest approach, you don't want something from your system ending up on the news. And Fusus does a really good job of making sure the person that's logged in even has like a watermark showing that they're the one doing it. So even if they don't export video and that clip ends up on social media, we'll know who was even viewing it. So there's a lot of really cool things that we put in the system to prevent these potential issues that our customers have either told us about or that we foresee coming. But that's not necessarily an agentic thing, but just you asked for like an actual instance. That's something I've talked to quite a few retailers about.
Oh, that's great. Wow, that's amazing. Keith, I actually have a question for you. We all know that adoption is, when it comes to AI, adoption is racing faster than governance, and the whole governance landscape is very fragmented. And of course, New York is doing something. They have a Retail Worker Safety Act. California is also, requires written workforce violence prevention plan. But when it comes to AI governance, what are your thoughts on? Do you feel that NRF or the retail industry should be drafting standards before regulators do it for us?
That's a very good question. And I will tell you that retail has done a good job in developing standards as part of their operating performance, whether it be around financial controls, whether it be around cybersecurity, something as simple and basic as food quality assurance. All retailers have standard operating procedures, and AI needs to have that same discipline. So your organization needs to be putting together a strong standard operating procedure guide that covers everything about ownership, usability, to the levels of when AI can operate autonomously versus when it needs to have interaction, and you can control those different elements. I actually think that a proper AI ownership looks like something like this: CEO, COO at the top level, and then drops right down to corporate security and LP because they're the ones that are going to be mitigating and maximizing the tools. And then IT, legal, HR, of course, is going to be involved, and then operations come in. But I say that AI affects and impacts every single one of those groups and divisions we talked about. So if one department tries to own it alone, it's a failure. IT cannot own this type of platform. APLP cannot own AI technologies. It has to be a shared consortium. And I would almost recommend that retailers put a board together where they have individuals representing each one of those categories that helps drive and develop the SOP and the ongoing governance of agentic AI or any other standard AI.
That was great. I really love what you said that IT cannot own this because so many people I talk to, everybody goes like, "Oh, AI is an IT thing." It's like, no, AI impacts everybody. It has to be a shared thing. Why deploy to AI? It's impacting decisions, it's impacting people. So I love what you said about shared responsibility. With that, I would like to go into a real world deployment scenario. So I heard about the Axon body meeting. So and it's specifically meant for retail frontline workers. So we all know when you have new technology or whenever you're talking about digital transformation or adopting a new tool, change management happens to be a big aspect, which sometimes I feel people can miss. So with Axon Body Mini, right? What does an associate adoption actually look like? And what do retailers frequently get wrong with respect to change management? And Joe, I would love to start with you first on that.
Yeah, so we have a really wonderful partner that happens to be one of the largest retailers in the world, and they're deploying our body cams right now. And we've been working with them for about the last year. They're in the midst of deploying the Mini, and they started off with their Axon Body Workforce. Um, One of the big things we learned through that process with them, partnering with them and trying to solve these issues, is just making sure people understand that Big Brother isn't watching. I think from like a change management perspective, once you put these devices on somebody to get them to buy into the process and understand why they're doing it, the first questions that come up is it on all the time? Is it watching me? Are you recording me? And is Big Brother seeing what I'm talking about in the break room? What happens when I'm in the bathroom? Like, how do we make sure this thing isn't doing any of these things that I'm really concerned about from again, Big Brother kind of perspective? And I think, making sure that the end user helps with the buy-in process, helps answer those questions. We obviously have all these rules and things we can do. The body cam's not recording it 24/7. We can turn it off. We can set up boundaries in areas where it does not record. So like if you're up in the break room, it won't record, or however you wanted to set it up, we can let the end users do it. But really making sure the associate is excited about it and understanding the why, and understanding that that tool helps not just the employee, but it also helps the customer base, and getting them to buy in and show what that ROI can look like. But it's hard to qualify ROI too when you're dealing with sometimes people's feelings. Like I feel safer, right? And that's something we've also worked with our end users on is like how do we make sure that they see the impact it could be making. And if you're talking that's full deployment, but even with pilots, I've seen pilots fail because they didn't worry about the employee buy-in. So the data that we got back during the pilot just didn't show success, or we didn't define success criteria right because of we didn't outline the operational impacts it could make, or the impact of the customer could make, or the impact to the associate. So all of those things we have to take into consideration as we try to make sure the associates are excited about it. But I think if you deal with like, let's say Q store or quick service, like maybe someone at the checkout counter, the drive-through, I think it's really easy to quantify the impact the thing could make, and then you can start to start it there, and then push it out through the rest of the organization, depending on, again, the type of retailer. But that's kind of what I've seen to it. Arjun, I'm curious. I know you and I were actually even chatting about this earlier today.
Yeah.
I know we were talking about like auditing and all those kinds of things, but I'm curious your take on it. Um,
I think this idea of being adopted, like truly loved by the field staff, is so important. We have put in enormous amount of calories into thinking about how can we make someone really want this tool, right? And that's how we think about it. It's a tool. It's a supercomputer on your chest, and it's a tool. And yes, it's going to keep you safer. But what are the things we can do to make it a truly delightful wearing experience, right? And when we looked at the market, we realized there was not a lot of people thinking about that at all. And so we thought about things like, well, how heavy is it? How does it snap on? Does it feel comfortable on your shoulders? Can people of like different shapes and sizes be able to wear this thing comfortably for 12 consecutive hours, right? And when you're starting, if you're a shift worker, you start your shift, you have a lot of things you need to do, and you just have to hit the ground running. How can we make that simple experience of just grabbing that camera and getting to the job you need to do so trivially simple that like you're not waiting in a line, for example, to take your device in the morning? So these kinds of things actually add up, and we call them like paper cuts, right? Any one thing may not be a big deal, but the combined experience of all of these things can add up to either like making or breaking your camera program. So with the Mini, what's really interesting is we have all of these like features to help you make your staff delighted in wearing it, and we've been able to field test it, get real world feedback, and the staff just truly love wearing this device. Now, and I think the other thing to really think about is what are your stakeholders within the corporate structure thinking about this investment, right? So it's a big investment for the company. So, how are you measuring that success? How are you able to communicate the return on investment, the safety outcomes, what incidents these things are uncovering in kind of both a very robust data-oriented way, but also pass along the internal anecdotes that you need to point and say, like, look, this particular incident was averted because there was a body camera present on that staff member. And those stories are really powerful, and we make it easy and give you the data so that internally you're able to persuade and influence your own stakeholders about the value of these cameras.
Yeah, and Arjun touched on a lot of great stuff there, and it just like made another random thought pop into my head. We had a retailer that's now looking at leveraging the Mini and our Axon assistant, which essentially could be looked at as an agent at the edge that they can communicate with. But in the returns department, instead of the employee making the call of can I return this or not, being able to leverage the camera to ask it a question, or their companion of the Mini, and say, under this, what is our policy for returns for this certain situation? Having the camera be the one that makes the decision, it takes the onus off of the employee, which also, according to that retailer, is something that they've seen end up with different types of escalations and issues and incidents. So they want to use the body cam to be that source of truth to make the decision, which takes it off the employee. So there's a lot of really interesting things we could be doing from like a buy-in perspective just by moving that like SOP and assistant agent at the edge.
Oh, it seems like a super agent the way you describe it. And I really liked, a lot of the points that you touched on, right? That how it's very important for the staff to feel that, hey, this is going to make me safe, right? And it's great to hear, Arjun, that the experience and the light that you shed on that how people are actually finding so much benefit, while wearing these cameras, and you've done enough testing and trying to figure out that, okay, is this heavy enough? Are they going to be comfortable wearing it for, such a long window, like 12 hours is a long time. And then also what you mentioned, Joe, right? That if you need answers, that you have like an assistant right there, so you can ask. So that was great. So I get the point that you talked about that as it is, it brings a lot of benefit, right? So but sometimes you could have a CFO who might be asking that, okay, and they're always about numbers, right? So besides everything that you touched on, is there anything else that you feel that when you're speaking to a CFO, how would you frame the agentic safety investment, as something very compelling, right? Especially for the cost center. Like, so how do you go about framing that?
Yeah, security, even before agentic AI, secure and vision models and all these cool things that have existed in the last few years, it's always been looked at as a cost center. So how do you quantify and show value to a CFO? I mean, what's the return on investment? Now, at the very beginning, you talked about this massive amount of loss. Now, does this impact loss? Is there metrics we can show per store, helping with the performance aspect of it and showing data points to show the impact it's making? But when we're talking, I think your question was specifically around safety rather than just, potential shrink and loss. From a safety perspective, think of what is your turnover rate and has it decreased your turnover rate? When employees feel safer at work, they're probably going to want to stay there and feel better about it. So if I'm at let's say a convenience store 2 hours from society out in the middle of nowhere, and it's me and one other employee at 2 in the morning, that may not be the most comfortable situation for that person. Introducing a companion like our body cam that enables panic buttons and watch me and all this stuff probably will increase retention of those employees, which that is a metric that we can show to the CFO too and say, here's a return on investment. You're having shorter turnover. Another one from like a safety perspective could be these de-escalations and these claims. Sometimes claims end up to the point of work comp claims, right? And that doesn't necessarily always have to be someone touching somebody. It could just be a feeling that they have that they don't feel safe at work anymore. So one impact in doing an analysis report, typically it takes us about 6 months or so to really understand that. But seeing did these stores have an impact to their amount of work comp claims that were made against them? And work comp claims cost a lot of money. So that also could help justify the return on investment. But I think if we look at just kind of the way that agents and vision models are kind of evolving and the way the industry has just been looking at it, whether that's Axon or others, how do we leverage this data for cross-functional analysis so we can understand store operations, we can understand how it impacts marketing, we can understand, how to be more efficient when we're staffing, we can understand the impact that certain sales are making and all of this different kind of stuff that you can do by leveraging that different sensor out in the field and using agents to help them. It's all about dashboards and return on investment. So, but that's less about safety, that's more about operational impact. So it just depends. And if I'm sitting with the CFO, I'm thinking all of these things, right? What motivates them? How do we show the return on investment?
I've got
Amazing.
uh,
Go ahead, Keith. I'm going to ask you to chime in.
I've got to jump on this because this is important. I've got a better way. Get your CEO, CFO, COO out to one of your most challenging stores where Axon can provide some of these cameras as a test and let him watch or her watch from their own eyes what's going on at the service desk, what's going on, for instance, in areas that always seem to be a challenge for retailers, and then let them watch and let them see how this AI element plays in when the automated translation starts helping a service desk clerk understand Spanish in real time, or when an associate or an employee doesn't know what to do and they can reference the automated coach that's AI driven. If he or her does not walk out of there thinking this is better than sliced bread, then you're working for the wrong retailer. And I will tell you this much. Joe said that we're working with one of the largest retailers in the world. I sat in the CEO's office and talked to him personally. Fortunately for me, he used to work in my group 20 years ago. And the question he had for me was, do these cameras really translate? That was the question that he had. And I told him they absolutely do, which he thought was phenomenal. He couldn't fathom that we had that technology. So you get them out there in the real world, and you're going to be able to sell these critical platforms without worrying about much of an ROI.
That was great, Keith. And I was actually thinking about my experience. How many times I've been at a store and I don't speak Spanish, right? And then sometimes it can be so challenging, right? So you also look at that added benefit, right? And again, not only there's a safety aspect, but also look, how it can help your customers. And I know that we are coming up on time. I just want to kind of close out. There were so many great points that you all touched on. I was just blown away with everything that I heard about the capability that Axon has with its, the vision model, its Gooses, and then the Axon Mini and the emphasis on safety. And Joe, you talked, about the operational impact, and we definitely touched on governance and human in the loop. So I just wanted to thank you all for bringing your insight and sharing with everybody what an amazing job Axon is doing. And I truly believe what you're bringing to the industry is revolutionary. With that, we'd love to open it up for questions to the audience. If you have any questions, please feel free to put that in the Q&A. I'm not seeing anything. Jess, was there a question that we had from somebody previously that left?
I don't see anything even in the chat. So unfortunately, I didn't see that question. I'll take a look.
All right. Anybody else? Okay, there's something. Great.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I mean, I have lots of questions. Now, if nobody has, like, I'll ask, right? That just to understand, how long has Axon been working on these things?
Look, I think, we have been at this for a long time because you don't just build these products overnight.
Yeah, exactly.
Many of the foundational capabilities that we're talking about here, they take years to develop and build. So this is not some overnight endeavor. And so I think the right measure is in decades, because if you think about our body cam business, the continuous innovation over many, many, many years and iterations of our body cameras, that's what has allowed us to be able to ship the device that you see behind me. And we're never going to stop, right? We're going to keep going down this road. And I can say with technology, everything just sort of compounds over time. Our skills in building better cameras, better models, better connected devices and sensors, all of this work is really coming together. And so, I wish I could just tell you that we kind of like started last year on this whole thing, but we've been chipping away at this for a long time, and we're just never going to stop. Okay, and it's just going to keep going.
I'm actually very happy that you said that you didn't just start last year, because I'm a firm believer that if you have been around for a number of years, you absolutely know what the hell you're doing.
Yeah.
So it's actually very comforting to know that you're truly leaders in this space, and you've been developing the technology for a number of years. And it's so amazing because now you have AI that has kind of come in the mix. So you're evolving, and you're making the technology even more robust and to go with what the kind of attacks and all the things that we're facing nowadays. So I'm actually happy to hear that you have been around for a long time. That's wonderful. Um, if we don't have any questions, we can give you 5 minutes back. With that, thank you once again. And did you want to drop in your LinkedIn for the folks in case they wanted to reach out to you for any questions? Or what?
Definitely.
Yeah, would that be okay? That's great.
Yeah, I'll add it to the chat and
Yeah,
I'm
happy to do that. Just give me a second, I can pull it up.
doing the same thing right now.
We are definitely seeing some messages. People found it very helpful. Thank you, Sayo. Thanks, Pete.
All right. Thank you,
Amazing.
everybody. Really appreciate
Thank you.
everybody's time.
Thanks,
Yeah,
everyone.
thank you. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank
You
you.
too. Bye-bye.